The sun was setting in the small town of Millfield as the old, rusty pickup truck drove down Main Street. The truck belonged to a man named Jack, a seasoned criminal who had spent most of his adult life in and out of prison. He was known for his bold and daring bank robberies, and the people of Millfield were about to find out just how daring he could be. As Jack drove down Main Street, he scanned the buildings, searching for his target. He finally found what he was looking for: the Millfield Savings and Loan Bank. Jack had been planning this job for months, and he was determined to make it a success. He parked his truck a few blocks away from the bank, and then made his way to the back alley. He was wearing a black hoodie, gloves, and a ski mask to conceal his identity. Jack took a deep breath and then entered the alley, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached the back door of the bank and picked the lock, slipping inside. He found himself in a small storage room, filled with boxes and supplies. Jack knew that the main vault was on the other side of the room, but he also knew that there would be guards. He drew his gun and moved quietly through the room, listening for any sounds of movement. As he approached the door to the main area of the bank, he heard footsteps. He held his breath, waiting for the guard to pass. As the footsteps faded away, Jack slowly opened the door and stepped out into the main room. The main room of the bank was dimly lit, with only a few overhead lights casting a soft glow. Jack could see the teller stations along one wall and the manager's office on the other. He also saw the door to the vault, and he knew that was his goal. He moved quietly across the room, his gun held in front of him. As he reached the vault door, he heard the sound of footsteps again. Jack spun around, aiming his gun at the sound. He saw a guard, a big man with a bald head, moving toward him. "Freeze!" Jack yelled, his voice echoing through the bank. The guard hesitated, and then reached for his own gun. Jack fired, hitting the guard in the shoulder. The guard dropped to the ground, his gun clattering against the floor. Jack turned back to the vault door, his hands shaking. He knew that he had only a few minutes to get what he came for and get out of the bank. He used his tools to crack the vault, and then stepped inside. The vault was filled with stacks of cash, and Jack felt a rush of excitement as he filled his bags with as much money as he could carry. He knew that he had to be quick, though, because the sound of his gunshot would have attracted the attention of the other guards. He stepped back out of the vault, and then heard the sound of sirens. Jack knew that the police were on their way, and he had to get out of the bank as quickly as possible. He ran toward the back door, the bags of money weighing him down. As he reached the door, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He spun around, aiming his gun, but then he saw that it was just a young woman, one of the bank tellers. She was staring at him, her eyes wide with fear. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "Just go. Take the money and go." Jack hesitated for a moment, and then he nodded. He turned and ran out the door, into the back alley. He heard the sound of police cars getting closer, and he knew that he had to get out of town as quickly as possible. He ran to his truck, jumping in and starting the engine. He peeled out of the alley, the tires squealing as he made his escape. He drove down Main Street, heading for the highway that would take him out of Millfield. But as he reached the edge of town, he saw that the road was blocked by police cars. Jack slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop. He looked around, searching for a way out, but there was no escape. The police were closing in, guns drawn, and Jack knew that he was trapped. He made a split-second decision, and then he accelerated, the truck jumping forward. He crashed into the police cars, pushing them aside as he made his escape. He heard the sound of gunfire, but he didn't stop. He drove down the highway, heading for the next town. The pursuit lasted for hours, with Jack driving as fast as he could, trying to stay ahead of the police. He knew that he was running out of time, and that he had to find a place to hide. Finally, as the sun was coming up, Jack saw a small road that led into the woods. He took the turn and then drove deep into the forest. He finally came to a clearing, and he parked the truck, hiding it behind some trees. He sat in the truck, catching his breath, as he tried to come up with a plan. He knew that the police would find him eventually, and he had to be ready. He gathered his supplies, and then started to make his way deeper into the forest, determined to escape the law and start a new life. Days turned into weeks, and Jack lived in the woods, surviving on his wits and his cunning. He avoided the main roads, and he never stayed in one place for too long. He became a ghost, a man who was always one step ahead of the law. Years passed, and Jack's name faded from the headlines. He became just a footnote in the history of the Millfield bank robbery, a criminal who had escaped justice. But Jack never forgot what had happened in Millfield. He never forgot the sound of the sirens or the feel of the money in his hands. He never forgot that he was a bank robber, and that was all that he would ever be. And so he continued to live in the shadows, always one step ahead of the law, always searching for his next big score. He was a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted, a man who was always one step away from the life that he deserved.